Just imagine for a second. You're one of only a handful of people in all of human history to walk on the moon. You are, quite literally, at the peak of human achievement. But what if the biggest, most profound discovery you made wasn't out there on the lunar dust, but on the long journey home? Well, today, that's the story we're getting into. The incredible journey of an astronaut who went to the final frontier and came back with a completely new mission to explore the inner space of human consciousness.
Now, you might hear that and think it came from a poet or a philosopher, maybe a mystic, but no. That was Captain Edgar Mitchell, a U.S. Navy pilot, an MIT-trained engineer, and the sixth man to set foot on the moon. So the question is, how does a man of pure hard science end up having an experience that felt, well, that it felt like it went beyond science itself? Okay, let's get into it.
To really feel the weight of Mitchell's story, you've got to understand the kind of person he was. We're not talking about a dreamer sent to the stars. We're talking about a highly trained, deeply analytical scientist, a man who was grounded in the hard facts of the material world.
I mean, just look at this career. This is a life defined by precision, by discipline, by objective reality. From flying jets for the Navy to getting a doctorate from MIT, one of the top engineering schools on the planet, and then getting picked for the elite astronaut corps. By the time he was piloting the lunar module for Apollo 14, Edgar Mitchell was the absolute embodiment of the right stuff. This was a guy who trusted his instruments, his data, and the laws of physics above everything else.
So it's February 1971. The mission was a total success, as the Apollo 14 command module is rocketing back to Earth through that silent, black void. Mitchell has a little bit of downtime. He just looks out the window. And in that quiet moment, something happened. Something that his decades of scientific training had absolutely no category for.
He's looking out at the Earth, the moon, the endless stars, and he's not just seeing them as rocks and gas. He felt this overwhelming connection to it all. He later called it an ecstasy of unity, something he recognized from ancient philosophy as a savikalpa samadhi, a state of deep intuitive insight. It hit him on a gut level that the molecules in his body, the molecules in the spaceship, they were all forged in the very same ancient stars he was looking at. He just knew, with a certainty that went deeper than his intellect, that the universe wasn't some random accident. It was a conscious, deliberate process, and he was an intimate part of it. Now, as it turns out, Mitchell wasn't totally alone in feeling something like this. While his experience was maybe uniquely intense, this kind of cognitive shift actually has a name. It's a phenomenon that's been reported by many astronauts, and it's called the overview effect.
Yeah, the overview effect. The term was coined by an author named Frank White, and it describes this profound change in perspective. Astronauts talk about seeing the Earth from space and realizing it's not a map. It's not a collection of separate countries with borders drawn on them. It's a single, impossibly fragile, living system, just hanging there in the dark. It's a shift that can completely change your relationship with the planet and everyone on it.
And this new perspective, it comes with a few key characteristics. An overwhelming sense of beauty, for one. A sudden, shocking awareness of how fragile our planet is. You see that paper-thin blue line of our atmosphere, and you realize it's the only thing protecting every living thing we've ever known. Astronauts talk about feeling this intense connection to all of humanity and seeing how totally arbitrary our borders and our conflicts are from up there. But the big one, as Mitchell put it, is you get a compulsion to do something about it. This feeling doesn't just stay up in orbit. They bring it home with them.
And for Edgar Mitchell, that compulsion became his new life's mission. You see, he had experienced something undeniably real, something that had changed him to his core. But the science he had dedicated his life to had no words for it, no way to explain it. He realized he had to build a bridge between these two worlds. This created a huge internal conflict for him. I mean, think about it. Here's a man who trusts objective, measurable data. But his most profound, life-altering experience was completely subjective, totally internal, and seemed impossible to prove. The standard scientific view said that consciousness is just a fluke, a side effect of brain chemistry. But his experience was screaming at him that consciousness was actually woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. So, how do you reconcile those two things?
He figured that maybe there wasn't just one way of knowing the world. Maybe there were two. On the one hand, you've got objective science, all the stuff we can observe and measure out there in the world. But on the other hand, you have what the ancient Greeks called noesis, or what he called noetic knowing. That's our inner wisdom. It's our intuition, our gut feelings, those aha moments of insight that feel completely true, even if we can't explain exactly why. Mitchell's epiphany in space? That was a purely noetic experience.
And so this led him to propose a whole new field of study, what he called noetic sciences. and the goal was frankly revolutionary. He wanted to use the rigorous, disciplined tools of objective science, observation, experimentation, data, to study the subjective, inner world of consciousness. It was this bold attempt to see if our inner feelings of connection actually have a measurable, physical counterpart in the real world.
And he didn't just talk about it, he made it happen. Just a year after his Apollo mission, he retired from NASA. Then, in 1973, he founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences, or IONS. His mission was crystal clear: to apply the exact same spirit of rigorous, courageous exploration that took him to the moon to this other final frontier, our own consciousness. He wanted to map inner space.
So what does exploring inner space even look like in practice? Well, IONS started investigating all these phenomena that mainstream science had kind of brushed aside. They were looking for the physical mechanisms that might explain that profound feeling of connection Mitchell felt. And let me tell you, the research went into some seriously mind-bending territory, right at the edge of modern physics and biology.
The central question really boiled down to this: what if that feeling of being connected isn't just a feeling? What if it's a real perception of a literal, physical reality that we just don't fully understand yet? And believe it or not, the weird world of quantum physics offered a pretty fascinating possibility. This gets us to the theory of entangled minds, which was really championed by the chief scientist at IONS, Dean Radin. So the easiest way to think about quantum entanglement is to imagine you have a pair of magic coins. If you flip one and it lands on heads, you instantly know, faster than light, that the other coin, even if it's on the other side of the galaxy, has landed on tails. They're mysteriously linked. So the theory asks, what if our minds are linked in the same way? What if our consciousness is non-local, and those weird gut feelings, or that spooky feeling of knowing what someone is about to say, what if that's just us picking up information through these invisible quantum connections?
Okay, that is a wild idea, for sure. But is there any way you could possibly test it, especially on a huge global scale? Well, this question led to one of the most ambitious and, honestly, one of the most fascinating experiments ever conducted in this field: the Global Consciousness Project.
All right, let me break this down because the concept is just brilliant. Think of a giant ocean. If you want to detect a tsunami, you'd put buoys all over that ocean. If one single buoy starts bobbing up and down wildly, that's probably just a local wave. But if buoys thousands of miles apart all rise up at the exact same time, you know a massive, coherent wave, a tsunami, is passing through. The Global Consciousness Project does the same thing, but for consciousness. The buoys are these little devices called random number generators, or EGGs, placed all around the world. Their only job is to spit out perfectly random ones and zeros, like a coin flip machine. The hypothesis was this: when a major global event happens, something like 9/11, or a massive global celebration, or a royal funeral, and millions of minds are all focused on the same thing, it should create a coherent wave in this global ocean of consciousness. And if it does, the data from the EGGs should become just a little bit less random.
And here's the jaw-dropper. After more than 20 years of collecting data, the cumulative result is staggering. The odds of this happening by random chance are less than 1 in a trillion. To give you some context, in particle physics, the gold standard for discovering a new particle, like the Higgs boson, is a certainty of 5 standard deviations, or 5 sigma. This result is 7 sigma. It's a powerful suggestion that when humanity shares a big emotional event, our collective attention is somehow correlated with a change in the physical world. Now, it doesn't prove how it happens, but it strongly indicates that something is going on. So, another really powerful theory that IONS has explored over the years comes from a biologist named Rupert Sheldrake. It's this idea of morphic resonance, and it basically suggests that there are these invisible, organizing fields that shape everything in nature, from how crystals form to how animals behave to even our own thoughts. Sheldrake's big idea is that memory is inherent in nature. He says that any system, whether it's an insulin molecule or a squirrel, tunes into a kind of collective memory from all the other insulin molecules or squirrels that have ever existed. This happens through what he calls a morphic field. A classic example is from the 1920s in Great Britain, when some birds, blue tits, figured out how to peck through the foil tops of milk bottles to get the cream. Now, what's weird is that this skill then spread across the country and even to Europe, way faster than it could be explained by birds just watching each other. The theory of morphic resonance would say that once the habit was learned, it entered the collective blue tit field, making it way easier for all future blue tits to pick up the same trick. So, wow,
We've gone from an astronaut's epiphany in deep space all the way to quantum physics, global consciousness experiments, and the memory of nature itself. And it all brings us right back to that fundamental mystery that Edgar Mitchell set out to explore in the first place. In the end, Edgar Mitchell's real legacy isn't some neat and tidy set of answers. It's a new and much more courageous way of asking the question. By founding the Institute of Noetic Sciences, he gave permission. He legitimized the rigorous scientific study of our inner worlds. He showed us that the journey inward is every bit as important and maybe even more challenging than the journey to the stars.
And really, this is the question that sits at the very heart of all of this. Is our awareness, our consciousness, just a ghost in the machine, a lucky byproduct of the 3 pounds of biology sitting inside our skulls? Or, as Edgar Mitchell came to believe on his long journey home from the moon, is consciousness something fundamental, a primary aspect of reality, just as basic as space and time and matter? You know, exploring that question, that might just be the greatest adventure we have left.